I'm Dale Smith for Looney Politics, and people have been asking me what is going on with the Senate. So, in less than 5 minutes, we'll give you the complete rundown. First of all, the Conservatives have elected a new Senate leader, who is Senator Don Plett. He was the whip before, and he's a fairly partisan individual, being as he was a former party president. And we are likely to see some clashing dynamics over the next couple of years, at least, as he essentially goads some of the independents into trying to get into the habit of doing things like negotiating the timelines for bills and so on. They've been reluctant to do that. Part of his tactics during the last parliament were to try and force them to the negotiation table. We'll see if that happens, but that's what we are likely to expect. Senator Dianne Bellmare, who is the deputy to the government leader in the Senate, or government representative, has left the position and returned to the independent senators group, which leaves a pretty big hole in the essentially leadership segment of the Senate. And we will have to see who Senator Peter Harder, the government leader, chooses to replace her. Assuming, of course, that he remains the government leader. There is a cabinet shuffle coming up, and it is entirely possible, although I'm not getting my hopes up, that the Prime Minister will choose a new government leader and have that person be in cabinet like the government leader is supposed to be. And this could be an opportunity to put a senator from Alberta or Saskatchewan in cabinet using the government leader position. We had a splinter group form in the Senate as well in the last couple of weeks who call themselves the Canadian Senators Group. These are mostly center-right or red Tory senators, if we're going to apply a label to them. A couple of them came from the Conservative caucus. Most of them came from the Independents. One of them was a former Liberal turned Independent, but they are all generally on the center-right. And part of what sparked that particular splinter is the fact that the independent senators group is kind of getting, we'll say, particular about what we're going to call independence purity tests. A lot of these people have pre-existing relationships with political parties. They were essentially being told to recant all of that. And they kind of got tired of it and said, hey, we'll form our own group. It's also because the independent senators group is getting so large that it's becoming more difficult to just discuss legislation as it's going through. So they're trying to, have a smaller group to have more focused discussions. And as part of that, they have capped their potential membership at 25. So it creates a smaller dynamic that will be easier for them to try and discuss issues and discuss legislation or other business as it goes through the Senate. The final bit of drama that happened this week was that the Senate Liberals have essentially rebranded themselves. They are now calling themselves the Progressive Senate Group, thus ridding themselves of the partisan label of Liberal in the hopes of getting some new blood. Again, with the notion that everyone wants to be independent in the Senate. Doesn't matter that the Liberals hadn't whipped their senators in years and years, but everyone, needs to be seen to be independent. And they were having trouble attracting new members from any of the new appointees who basically said, well, the Prime Minister asked me to sit as an independent and I don't want to disappoint him, even though they're under no obligation to actually do so. Nevertheless, because the Liberals were in danger of losing party status in the Senate, because their membership is about to drop by 2 more in the new year, which would be below the threshold, this means that they have a chance now to attract new senators, whether from the existing independent senators group or new appointees, because there are currently 5 vacancies and 5 more due in the next 6 months. So it'll allow them to basically have another group that will be more center-left than the Canadian Senators group being center-right. And essentially, again, with that same kind of notion of having a smaller group very experienced group, which can offer a lot of mentorship to new senators, and having a slightly more cohesive approach to approaching Senate business than we see in the ISG. And that is your brief rundown of what is happening in the Senate. For Looney Politics, I'm Dale Smith.